Welcome back to Two Gens, 2 Cents, brought to you by 15 Minutes of Finance. This is episode 21, When is it time for insurance? If you are a listener to the podcast, it is probably not a shock to you, or it's not a new statement to you, that we often take a very contrary position to insurance agents, specifically in the field of advising. We've talked a lot about how insurance products as investments are not right, how the incentive structures and commissions of insurance agents kind of perverts their incentive structure to offer comprehensive planning, lots of different things like that. So today we're going to talk about when does insurance make sense for you? How do you get the tools to make the right insurance decisions for yourself? What type of insurance should you be looking for? Those type of questions and answers. So James, topic is when is it time for insurance? Let's start with just health insurance. So the most simple thing everybody thinks about. So when is it time for health insurance, and how would you answer that question for yourself?
When you're 26 and you can get off your parents' policy, okay? Milk it until you can't anymore. No, first I'll start with this. Insurance is boring. It's not attractive or fun. Nobody likes it. But it does have a role in a financial plan and in financial health. So there are attributes of it that it's important to understand. Okay, so like health insurance, that's probably the most important one out of all the insurances you can get. That's probably the most important. Health insurance in general, pretty expensive, but it's very, not very, but there are levels to it that allow you to customize it towards your needs. So again, I would say there's two times. One, when your parents make you get off it, which you're legally required at 25 or 26. I can't remember.
I think it's 26.
So at 26, that's when it's time to get it. The other time is when your company pays for it, right? If your company offers it and you're not on your parents, it's time to get it at that point. Now, I mean, what do we pay for insurance? $800, $1,000?
You talking health insurance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's about, I want to say 400-ish per person for like the Kaiser standard.
Okay.
So mine's higher because I have more dependents, whatever. But per person, it's roughly in that range.
So, I mean, that's an expensive monthly cost. I would tell you, you definitely don't want to go into medical debt. So health insurance, that would be the first thing I look at getting. One, when you're off your parents, so at 26, and two, when your company is willing to provide it because they get group benefits, group levels of cost, they get a better deal. That would be the time when I would say that's the most important.
Let me add two things to this too. So one is this also means if you are an employer, the time is now. So to flip that rhetorical question around, if you're a business owner, and we've hammered this on multiple episodes, but I'm not getting a lot of emails from my clients that I know are listening. So if you are an employer, even if that just means you're a sole owner of your business and you're personally paying for health insurance, why? Let me just ask that. Instead of constantly explaining to you, you can get a tax benefit, you might be able to get a lower rate. Just genuinely ask yourself, why am I paying personally for health insurance? If you don't know the answer to that, it's probably time to start exploring employer-provided health insurance. And look, so James and I, we've talked about this is our first year officially operationally in our business being under the same roof. So separately, we've operated separate businesses, okay? So now we're in the process of kind of merging everything and getting everything over. We, in the last week, have walked through this process. It's very easy. We used Kaiser. You can refer to an agent to shop for you. You can reach out directly to insurance like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Kaiser, whatever. Talk to a rep, say, hey, I'm an employer. They're going to ask you 5 minutes of questions over the phone, and then they send you an application process to get covered. It is not a hard process to get health insurance. So if you're a business owner and you're not doing it, ask yourself why, because you can get a deduction for it. You might be able to even get lower rates for the same coverage. There's really not a lot of reasons not to do it, and it's not a hard process for you, okay?
That's pretty much the most straightforward insurance, I would say.
Yeah, and a lot of states mandate it. So for a lot of you, it isn't even really a question of how to get health insurance? Or excuse me, like, should I get health insurance? It's a question of like, what's the best way to get health insurance? So yeah, if you are the employer, if you own a business, you should be having employer provided health insurance. It's just a better way to do it. And I had a second thing to add to what you said, and I'm not sure I remember it. So maybe we'll come back.
It'll come back to you.
What else I was going to add? But so to add one note. So my second thing I wanted to say is on stay on your parents for as long as you can. So one, kind of jokingly, milk it as long as you can. That's true. If you can stay on your parents, obviously that's awesome. But the other reason too is like I can say from adding my son to our insurance, and he's a baby still. But the dependent rates are often lower than adult rates because you're very, very young. In general, life insurance, health insurance, the younger you are, the healthier you are, the lower premiums are. So when you're a dependent rather than just another covered person, you're at a minor dependent or an early 20s dependent, your rate also might just be lower as a dependent of an existing plan than your own plan as an adult. So that's another element to it. It's not just about like, well, if your parents can pay for it, you don't have to. It's also literally your rate might be lower. So even if it's a situation where you're on your own, you have a job, but you can still be covered by your parents' insurance, you might just want to reimburse them and stay on until you're 26, just because it might still be a lower rate than getting your own health insurance in the marketplace. Cool. So health insurance is pretty straightforward. There's not as many options really to think about as advisors, us kind of talking about that element of it. So let's talk about life insurance, which is a little bit more complicated. That's probably the next thing people think about with insurance. And that's really probably what we'll spend most of this episode on. It's really kind of what the episode is about. When is it time to get a life insurance policy? So how would you answer that question, James?
Oh, when you need it, I guess is again, I know these are cheesy, not necessarily ideal answers, but when you need it. And the when you need it, I would say, is when you have a dependent. Okay. Most of this stuff has to do with dependency. So Brandon's got a kid. He's got a wife. Those are two people that depend on him. He should consider insurance, right? And he has been. It's been months that we've been talking about insurance, and we both run a company together. Him and I have both talked about insurance on one another because technically we depend on one another. So it doesn't just have to be family, but that is the right answer when you need it. And if you have a dependent, you need it. Okay. I'm not a big advocate of every investment is important to every financial plan. There's a lot of advisors that are like that, where they're like, if you want to work with us, we have to do your insurance. We have to do your disability insurance. We have to do your IRA, your 401k. There are people that work that way. I don't necessarily believe that. It's not necessarily important for every plan to have every aspect covered, but insurance, I do think when you have dependents, is very important. One, because it can be very low cost. Okay. Very, very low cost. Excuse me. You'll hear all types of terms in the insurance world. The main three that I want you guys to think about with this is whole life, universal, and term insurance. Okay, the first two, whole life, universal, essentially the same. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, essentially the same thing, just wrapped up in different crap. That's what I would say. So it's essentially the same thing, just wrapped in different crap. Now, term insurance, that's what we like. Very inexpensive, and you can cover a lot of things with it. So to give you an example, maybe $1 million policy. Oh, let me backpedal. An insurance policy typically covers between 10 to 15 times your annual income. That's very typical. It's very standard. So if you make $100,000, $1.5 to $1 million is a pretty reasonable policy. If you're 30 years old and you make $100,000, your term insurance might be, $60 a month. I mean, it could
be less.
Yeah, it could even be less, assuming you're in good health, right? They ask if you drink, smoke, take your blood. They go through the whole thing. But a 20, 30-year policy might be $60. And if you die the day after you sign this, your dependent's going to get $1 million. I mean, that's a pretty good deal. And if you did the math over, your 30-year life, because what is 60 times 12? $720, something like that.
Man, that's quick. Yeah.
Is that right?
Beautiful.
So $720 over 30 years obviously is not $1 million. So very easy to say, see how that works. Now, if you were to get whole life or universal, without getting too much into the weeds there, you're going to be paying 10 times that a month, sometimes 15, depending upon the structure of the policy. Very, very expensive. And those policies are always sold and never bought.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
Yeah, for sure. So let me add one thing too to kind of give a little bit, I don't know, credibility to this position. There are I would say decent amount of things that we would not agree with someone who is in like the very firm, like Dave Ramsey camp of thinking, which is very little risk, never leverage debt, never be in debt. You want to be debt free. Work as hard as you have to make money, to pay for things in cash, no credit card, no loans, all of that type of stuff. So Dave Ramsey is a proponent of stability over everything else. Dave Ramsey has multiple segments where he is adamantly arguing against whole life and universal life type policies. Okay, so this is the type of person who would usually be all for, well, what's the safest option? What makes sure there's not debt? What makes sure there's not risk? It is universally, it's kind of funny because it's universal policy, but it is often most of the industry that aren't insurance agents is in agreement that it is not a good investment. Because for those of you who don't understand, a whole life policy is an insurance policy with an added component of a cash value that is invested theoretically and gets you returns, okay? So when you're in a whole life policy, you're really doing two things. You can visualize it this way. If I get term for $1 million in my 30s, it's $60 a month, right? We'll use James's example. It's going to be $720 a year. And I also want to max out my Roth IRA, okay? $6,000 a year maximum. I put $60 a month into my, I pay my term policy. And then I put, what's the math on that? 6,000 divided by 12?
523. Hold on. I'll do the math. 6,000.
It's 500 a month, right? Because it's
500.
Okay,
it is.
cool.
I was close.
The 23 bucks was unnecessary. That's good though. I appreciate the effort. So $500 a month, right? When you buy a whole life policy, you're basically just giving $560 to pay for insurance. And then they say, ooh, you're building up cash value. That can be invested. And this serves as an investment option for you down the road in your life. But if you look at the fees, you look at the way they front load the fees, you look at the pretty minimal returns, it's basically just buying insurance and then investing in the worst possible way in your Roth IRA.
And the insurance is not a lot of money. The insurance is less because they're saying, hey, we have an investment component and an insurance component. We're going to lower your insurance amount.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of features and factors that it does not make sense, and it's very expensive, but it's sold as an investment product. It's almost never sold as an insurance product because the insurance isn't good. But guess what it's called? Insurance.
The insurance is just a minimum. So they say, look, this is the minimum payout in the event of your death, but it'll go up if your investment in the more cash value you build, the higher it'll do, because at a market high, you'll have more cash value, so your payout will actually be higher. But that minimum amount, even the maximum amount, is going to be less than the term insurance, and the minimum amount is going to be way less than you'll get under the term insurance. So that's kind of our advice. Insurance is great if it's insurance. And if you're buying insurance for insurance, you want term. And the reason it's called term, we kind of just jumped into it. We should probably explain our terms a little bit more here to our listeners. So term insurance means you buy insurance for a period of time, a term. For a lot of people, that's 30 years. That's a very common one. So you pay $60 a month from age 30 to 59 and 11/12. And then on your 60th birthday, the term of your 30-year insurance has now expired. And I think usually now for a much higher amount, because you're much closer theoretically to passing away, you're 60 years old now, you can usually, do a new term for a much higher amount, obviously, because you're now later on in your life, but you're buying insurance to cover in the instance of your death, and now income is lost for your family and your dependents. You're not buying an insurance policy as your retirement plan. And that's really what we're trying to inform people of and push you away from, is things like whole life and universal, they're basically like, this is your retirement plan, and there's insurance in it, and there's cash value, all these things. Make good investments in a retirement account for retirement. And now if you pass away in retirement, your spouse gets stepped up Social Security, they get their own Social Security, they have their investments that you left behind, and maybe real estate or whatever other components you did. You shouldn't need your life insurance to retire. It's not a retirement option. It covers the event of if you die before you get to retirement.
And just to give you guys a visual here, say you have Bob and Rob. Okay, Bob does what we're recommending. He does the $60 a month, and then he puts the max into his Roth IRA, his 401k, just does the standard. Okay, and we'll say that's $5,000 a year. Okay, so it's not even that much. It's not the max. He's just investing $5,000 a year into the retirement accounts, into a just standard S&P 500 mutual fund. And then you have Rob, who is doing, I really like this whole life policy. I'm going to put $5,000 a year into that. Okay, the difference in 30 years will be at least $500,000, if not more. I'm trying to do the math in my head, but it's probably at least $500,000, where Bob is doing way better, has way more cash flow, has access to his money, doesn't pay any fees, versus Rob, who now he's got this cash value, but it might be like $30,000. It might be $50,000 of cash value. And in his head, it's like, I've built up this money at $50,000. $50,000? That's you paid probably $200,000 in fees and mutual fund expenses within that insurance product. Okay. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't.
Yeah, there's multiple percentage points of difference in the average rate of return over the life of each of those options. And with compounding interest and decades of time, multiple percentage points of increased return in your investments in an actual retirement plan far outweighs and eclipses a return that's multiple percentage points behind. And at any point in those 30 years, if Bob or Rob dies, I don't remember which one's which. I think Bob was the good one.
Yeah,
All
Bob
right,
was
love
the good
Bob.
one.
So if Bob dies, his family got more money as well. So in addition to at the end of 30 years, Bob has way more money because he invested it in a real managed investment account with an advisor, or even just had it in the market and got 10%. That's great. Rob, if Rob dies, his family won't even get as much money for all that hundreds of dollars a month that he put in. They still don't get as high of a death benefit as if he had just paid the $60 and got a term insurance for 30 years for a much higher benefit amount.
In fact, this is a good visual for you guys. If nothing we've said numerically really resonates, there are people who they're 20 years into a whole life policy. Okay, and I have done the math for them. It has made more sense for them just to cut it off right there, end the policy. Okay, they've put all this money in, 5,000. They put in 5,000 over 20 years, so they've put $100,000 into this policy, and it makes more sense to take that money and invest it in just a very conservative, nothing crazy fund. They'll have more money in 10 years than what they put in over 20 years, and even if they kept it. Does that make sense? So you're 20 years into the life of something, 20 years invested in something, and it would make more sense for them to cut it off right then because of how expensive it is.
Yeah.
That's great. I can't think of another investment that's like that except for insurance products.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about one last type of insurance, and it's one that you know a little bit about and you've worked with before, and that's I'm totally blanking on the name
Disability?
of the insurance. Yeah, I was gonna say when you can't work. Yeah. Disability insurance.
So I would say there's two very important other types of insurance. One would be long-term care insurance and disability insurance. They're different, but I would say they're important. One, because once you hit 60, long-term care becomes really like in your head. That's a huge fear of people, and they get sold these long-term care insurance products. They're not very good. So we can talk about that another day to get into more of the weeds of them, but long-term care insurance typically isn't, again, it just isn't enough versus if you just would have invested the money correctly. So that's the first thing. Next, disability, like Brandon had just said, I don't want to use the word love, but I definitely advocate for disability insurance. And that's mainly because I started my career in the medical field. So a lot of our clients were medical providers. Now, if you know anything about that field, they go to school for a really long time. They usually start at 35 with $500,000 in debt. Okay,
if they're lucky.
Yeah, they need disability insurance because what happens if they, a lot of them are really active when they're young. What if they go on a big mountain biking trip and they fall down the mountain and break their hand and now they can't do surgery anymore? Okay, well, that's what they just spent the last 20 years going to school for. What are they going to do? They have $500,000 in debt, et cetera. Well, disability insurance really covers that. So disability, I think, will cover up to 60%, and you could get a little bit more, but 60% of your income will be covered. And so I'll use an example of a doctor that I've recently done this for. So Dr. Smith, quote unquote, he makes $400,000 a year. He's a surgeon. He now pays $10,000 a year to be able to get, what is 60%? Was that 250, 300, something like that, of that 400. Okay. So now he pays $10,000 a year and his insurance will cover, if he has an event, $250,000 of his $400,000 salary. Was I close?
240. Very close.
Dang,
yeah.
240. All right. Okay. So 240, he'll get 240. And what's really great about this insurance is that, say he broke his hand, like in our situation, he went on a mountain biking trip and broke his hand. Well, Dr. Smith is a surgeon, so he can't do surgery anymore, but he can still see patients. So now he can act as a general, like a family practitioner, and see patients every day. So now we can get another $200,000 from that. Okay. So he actually will be able to increase his salary because he's getting the disability insurance and he's just a family practitioner doctor. He's not a specialist surgeon anymore. So those are the situations where I really like disability insurance. Anybody in a manual labor field, I absolutely recommend it. So if you're a foreman or you're a Christmas light installer, or any sort of manual labor job, highly recommend it because it's not very expensive relative to your salary. And it is all dependent upon your salary. So like I said, Dr. Smith paid $10,000 a year to be able to get 240. That's a pretty, it covers your butt, but then it also gives you that's really nice peace of mind that I think is available. So disability insurance, not expensive, covers your bases. If you're like a teacher, do you really need it? I don't think so. You need to really think about a qualifying event that your life might, be exposed to.
Not to be morbid, but that would be a hell of an accident to prevent you from teaching in any capacity.
Well, yeah, you would have to have a real accident.
You'd be almost dead at that point, I think.
Oh,
if you can sit in a chair and open your mouth, you can teach, so it's.
I'm thinking of Stephen Hawking right now, just like being a teacher, because he could do it. He did some teaching stuff.
That's true.
Okay, sorry to be morbid, but yeah, that's the disability. I like disability. I think it makes sense. It's a good fit. It helps supplement is what I would say. And your employer might offer disability insurance. Yeah. It's usually horrible. Same thing with life insurance. Some companies offer life insurance. We'll probably do that at some point just because I would love the idea of offering great benefits to people to keep and retain good key employees. But usually it's like $50,000. So, I mean, $50,000 for most people, that's not even a year's salary.
What's the time on this? So is there a maximum period standard covered by disability insurance?
For disability?
Or if I break my hand, it's until I retire, I'm at 240.
Yeah, usually it's till age 60.
Okay.
But there are other, I guess, just packages, I guess you could say, that'll take it up to 75. I've never seen a disability insurance go to 75. I would assume it's expensive. But yeah, it's a term type of policy as well.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like, to go back to kind of the topic of the episode, in the realm of disability insurance, when is it time for insurance? Sounds like two types of people who have a very high risk of injury, regardless of necessarily if they're super high income earners, or people who are very high income earners, especially if their position is very leveraged. There's a lot of risk to not being able to do their job, and they're highly skilled. Those would kind of be the two people
Absolutely.
that are main candidates.
That's who I would suggest. Yes. Yeah. You're very skilled. Or, I mean, you're a key person where you've got to be present. I mean, when you get hurt or something happens, like, you want to be at home. You know?
Yeah.
So if you've got to be present, that's another one. But yeah, I would say that covers. That was a good job explaining that. Those
thank you very much.
two people. Yeah.
All right, guys, that's it for this episode about insurance. Thanks for listening, as always. Please leave a comment on the video, anything you'd like us to answer or a topic you'd like to hear covered in the future. You can always leave a comment, reach out to us directly on anything you'd like to hear in future episodes. Share with your friends. We'd always appreciate our people who listen to the podcast. Hopefully, they're informative. I get... Honestly, as a percentage of listeners, a lot of people reaching out to me saying, hey, I really like this episode, or hey, I actually want to set up an appointment because of what you talked about in this episode. So I could tell people are learning, so share it with your friends. Make sure other people can learn as well. We always appreciate that.
And also, if you know any insurance people, send them this, because I would be happy to have conversations with them that might get a little uncomfortable.
If you know an insurance agent who is willing to debate the merits of whole life with us on the podcast, we will happily do that. We will absolutely risk our reputation and go to bat at a whole life person and ask them to legitimize why we're wrong about whole life and why it's a good suggestion for clients. We will happily debate them on the podcast. That's a promise.
Brandon's the debater. I'm going to sit here and just make fun of the guy. But no, I'm kidding.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. And as always, invest early.
Invest often.
See you next time.